You never know how much time you have. For me, that stopped being an idea and became reality on August 22nd, 2021. The doctors put me on a ventilator and told my wife to call hospice so she could prepare for the day they planned to pull the plug. 6 weeks later, I woke up to an entirely different reality. I could not walk, I could not talk, I could not even lift my own arm. And I woke up realizing something else. I had not made the right preparations for my family. The plans I thought were pretty good fell through when it mattered most. That is why Fiduciary Alchemy welcomes voices that would have warned me about the holes in my plans. My hope is that you live a long and prosperous life, but I also hope you make better plans than I did. So tune in, take notes, and stay with us through the end when Bluesman Grindle and the Compliance Choir bring a word of caution.
Hello and welcome to the Fiduciary Alchemy podcast. I am not your host, Nils Vinje, but I am with your host, Craig Andrews. Craig, welcome to episode number 1 of your podcast.
Nils, thank you. Thanks for doing this. When I was thinking who to do host our inaugural episode, I couldn't think of anybody better than you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the trust you have in me. I'm excited to dig into all things that this podcast is going to be, where it came from, why it exists, who you're going to talk to, and we're just going to kind of set the stage for everybody so you know exactly what to expect in all the incredible future episodes. So Craig, why don't you start with what's the point of the Fiduciary Alchemy podcast?
To answer that, I kind of need to step back in time to 2021 because that's really what sets the stage. You know this. Anybody that's been listening to my other podcast knows this. But, I went in the hospital in August of 2021 with COVID. Almost immediately, they put me on the ventilator and told my wife that I wasn't going to make it. Obviously, I did. And I was in a coma for 6 weeks after I woke up from my coma. And then after my mind cleared up a little bit, my wife started telling me what had been happening. And one of the things she told me was that my team had been running the business without me, and they'd been doing an amazing job. And freelancers had reached out to my team saying, hey, we'll do whatever's necessary while Craig's in the hospital. And so that was kind of the inspiration for my first podcast, Leaders and Legacies, was it's about celebrating leaders who are making an impact beyond themselves and also building teams that can run without them. But there was something else. I also realized after waking up from the coma, you know what? There's a few things I don't quite have in place. And in terms of taking care of my family, financial matters, and all of that, I certainly didn't expect to die that young. And then there was one thing I thought I'd done a good job with. I made sure my stepson had access to my password manager, both my business passwords and my personal passwords for such a time as that. The problem was he forgot they had access.
Oh no, what happened?
There were a lot of things they couldn't get into.
Yeah, he just didn't know how.
Didn't know how. Because previously it had sloppy password techniques, he found an Excel file and he was able to figure out a couple passwords. But largely nobody had access. So one of the things, kind of the inspiration for Fiduciary Alchemy is we want to bring on voices that are helping people prepare for what's hopefully a very long and prosperous life.
Yeah.
But also the eventual end of that life, that their families wouldn't have to face the uncertainty that my family nearly faced.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Because, and that is one of those things that we don't often like to think about. It's one of those not often talked about. You might meet once a year with an advisor or something, but sometimes you might go years without thinking about what could happen. And truth is, we never know what's going to happen tomorrow or even today.
Yeah. And the other thing is we do this part-time.
Yeah.
And as a result, there are holes in our part-time plans that people who do it full-time recognize, and they say, hey, you know what? I know you think that's going to work, like having somebody have access to your passwords. What are you going to do if they forget?
Here's how it's going to fail. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we trust the experts, which
Yeah.
are going to be some of your guests. All right, so the name Fiduciary Alchemy is quite unique, and I've never quite heard it out there in the world before. So why don't you share a little bit about where that name came from and what it really means in relation to this podcast?
Yeah. So, yeah, fiduciary, you hear a lot of advisors saying, hey, we're a fiduciary. And so that's kind of the essence of it. It's kind of a domain term, that you're going to be finding people talking in the financial space. There's some other, it turns out the same laws that govern them also are governing folks that deliver employee-sponsored healthcare. But that's not really our audience. It just helps narrow that down of we're talking about that. Alchemy was like the ancient art of the pursuit of gold. They were trying to figure out how to synthesize gold. And that's what a lot of the advisors are doing is they're synthesizing gold, basically robust retirement plans and estate plans. But I would actually argue the greater gold is the relationships and the lives that are being touched by the way they're doing that. And the number one persona of high net worth investors is the family steward. Their primary goal for investing is to create a financial legacy for their kids and grandkids. But I would say, really, it's, at least in my opinion, it's more of a wealth legacy, and wealth is not about money. Wealth is about skills, it's about attitudes, it's about stewardship. And the best wealth managers help their clients do that. The best tax planners help their clients do that. The best estate planners help their clients do that.
That's really interesting and drilling in on that wealth piece. I suppose that wealth is also has a different definition for everybody. And are those going to be key topics that you talk about with your guests as far as, yes, you are a wealth planner. What does that mean to you? And in some of your early episodes, have you even seen that one person's definition is completely different than others?
It's not a question I've been asking so far. And as you've insinuated, I've actually already done some reporting, recorded some episodes, and that's not been a question I've asked, but I do plan for it to be a question moving forward.
All right. So, Craig, you mentioned that you've recorded some episodes with some guests and would love to hear a little tease of who these folks are and what some of the topics are that you covered so we can get the audience ready for what's coming next.
Yeah, so our very first guest is Mark Miller with the Hilton Family Office. Hilton Hotels, he's with the Hilton Family Office. And one of the really cool things that he's about doing is making the family office accessible to more people. A lot of the investments that are done in a family office, he's trying to make those accessible to people who don't yet qualify to be in a family office. And the one of the things that he talks about is smart money, and it ties back to something I've seen before. Warren Buffett frequently sits on about a quarter of his investable assets. He sits on that in cash. And people are like, well, you're not making any money in cash. Why are you doing that? And part of his strategy is he wants to have the cash there so that when he sees something that's good to buy, he doesn't have to go raise the cash. He has it, he can go do it. Well, Mark Miller with Hilton Family Office, they do that as well. And they said that's the way the ultra wealthy work. That's how they operate. And if you want to break out of where you are and start getting some of that, you need to have some of what you call smart money that's quick to deploy. I really love that point that Mark made. Episode number 2 is Peter Culver, who is a tax strategist. He's an attorney by training and a tax strategist. And he has some just absolutely amazing insights. And the things he talks about is, um, you know, one of the best ways of making wealth in America is to launch a business and build it into something big. And then the next way is to sell it. And so that kind of brings in, the tax strategist, him, and we have some other ones lined up that basically help businesses minimize the amount of taxes that they have to pay when they exit their business. And there's some really, really clever strategies out there that help you avoid significant amounts of taxes.
That's the crazy part, right? And that's what I'm looking forward to in listening to your episodes is these are people who oftentimes you're never going to get access to have a conversation with, or the vast majority of the people, right? Hilton Family Office. How many times are you going to sit down with Hilton Family Office? That's the beauty of a podcast. And you already sat down and had a great interview and pulled out all the juicy nuggets so the general population can get some insight into that. So with all of these guests that, you've had on so far and the ones you hope to and you're planning to have in the future, tell me this: what is the single most important thing that you want a listener to always be able to know they can take away from any episode of the Fiduciary Alchemy podcast?
My hope is that any listener, once they're done listening, would say, you know what, I hadn't thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
And and the thing is, in that world, there's just so many details. And I would love every listener, and for me as a host, that's my joy when I'm asking these guys and they tell me something, I'm like, I hadn't really thought of that. For me, that's a moment of pure joy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Because that insight then brings whatever the next step is, whether it's asking your own financial team or person a question, or if you don't have somebody like a tax strategist on hand, maybe it would be a good idea at some point to have a conversation with some of those folks. And now they've already built some trust as a result of your conversation with them. And that can be a wonderful, virtuous cycle of adding value and building connections, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, and that's actually an example. One of the things that Peter and I talked about in his episode is the difference between a CPA and a tax strategist. So many people say, hey, my CPA is my tax strategist.
Right.
If that's your plan, you've got major problems and you need to make a change. Tune in. We're going to be bringing the people that are going to help you understand why your CPA isn't your tax strategist.
Right. And how they should work together in an ideal fashion, right? One, that to know they're different is incredibly valuable, but two, then, well, how do you orchestrate them together? And do I always have to be the centerpiece? Or are there people that have this capability in two sides of the house and firms that actually do this for you? I don't know, but I imagine we'll find out on that show.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. And we have another guest, Eric Brenner, he actually pulled both things in-house because what was happening with him was he's primarily a wealth manager, but he was also starting to look at tax, and he would do some investments that were tax advantageous. And his clients were coming back to him and saying, hey, my CPA won't do what you said.
Yeah, there you go.
And he was like, it's because they don't understand.
And
so he decided to pull everything in-house so he didn't have to explain. So, he had people with different competencies in-house. And so that's the other thing is different people are looking at the same problem and they're solving it in different ways.
Yeah.
And so it's not that there's one specific way to solve these problems. There's a lot of ways and you need to figure out which works best for you.
Yeah, 100%. All right, you're going to present the options and then it's up to each person to figure out the right path. So Craig, who is the ideal guest for those who are going to listen to your podcast, find a lot of value, and may be interested in being a guest on your show? Who should fit into that seat? What's the criteria?
Yeah, so the number one guest, we're looking for wealth managers that have 4 or more advisors in the firm. And the reason for 4 or more is there's a level of sophistication that they have to achieve, because there's still a leadership component to this. We're still about people building big teams. And, a loan advisor, that builds a big book of business, that's great. But where it gets really interesting is when you start bringing other people in the firm. So that's the first one. The second one is we would like to have tax strategists in there. And third would be estate planning attorneys. And one that I just started thinking about in the last day or so is maybe even exit planners for businesses, because that's the way a lot of wealth is generated. It's generated within the business. And I was having a conversation with somebody this morning, and he was talking about one of the mistakes that people make as they're prepping their business for sale Uh, Business owners like to take distributions out of their business. And it turns out that's an enormous red flag if you're planning an exit.
Oh, yeah.
Other businesses say, hey, before we sell, we're going to start cutting to the bone. We're going to cut expenses. Well, it turns out that the guys that are buying your business, they're not idiots. And they start looking for these markers.
They know how to read the tea leaves.
Exactly. And so we may have some exit, planning people that work it, because that is a major way that wealth is generated. And there's some common mistakes that people fall
Yeah,
into that minimize the value of their business. And obviously, you've worked hard to build this valuable asset. You want to get paid the most for it.
100%. Love it. That's fantastic. Those are going to be some incredible episodes. We got a bunch in the queue. There's more coming. If you fit any of those criteria, go to Craig shared the link for them to apply to be a guest on the show, so you can send them to the right place. Make sure they know how to go through the process.
Yeah, so very simply, you go to fiduciaryalchemy.com and you should see a link that says podcast, a menu item that says podcast. If you want to go there directly, it's fiduciaryalchemy.com/podcast. And there's a form there. Just fill that out. My team will review it. And if you're a good fit, we'll invite you on the show. If you're not a good fit, we're going to try to give you some resources that help you out in your business. We hate just saying no. We'd love to see you. If you're an advisor with, one or two advisors in the firm, we have some resources that will help you grow. So you do have a 4, 5, 6 advisor firm and managing, billion in assets under management or
Yeah, and
billions.
that in billions, yeah, that piece about growth, and you are an expert in this space, and you've done a lot of work helping organizations like these guests you're describing grow to that larger size, adding more advisors, adding more assets under management. Share just a little bit about what growth looks like in that world to you.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems that we see, and it's not just me, we listen to the industry. Schwab does a annual survey of RIAs, and one of the biggest challenges is organic growth. And the reason I believe is a lot of that industry is about one-to-one contact, and they don't know how to build trust on scale. Because you only have so much time for coffees and steak dinners.
Yeah.
And
Right. And you can only scale yourself so far.
you can only scale. Well, we've figured out how to build trust on scale. And it's not that we figured it out. Like most things in life, we saw somebody doing something and we stole their idea. We stole from Hollywood, and Hollywood knows how to write magnetic characters that bring you back week after week. You're able to form bonds with people that you've never met, and actually people that are fictitious. What Hollywood writes around fiction, we write around truth. And it's about developing the magnetic character of your company. It's there, it's intrinsically there. But a lot of businesses don't know how to structure it and communicate it to others to make them really stand out, especially in crowded markets like wealth management.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And where without that distinction, one wealth manager might look awfully similar to another. And you have to be able to stand out in order to grow, and you have to have a unique persona, if you will, and you have to target specific personas, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And this gets a little bit in a little bit deeper into what we do, but one of the biggest problems that we find that financial advisors or wealth managers are doing is their qualification criteria is anybody with pulse and a money.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is there's 9 personas of high net worth investors. And you will work really well with 2 or 3 based on your unique wiring. You're going to work horribly with 2 or 3 based on your unique wiring. And so what the very first tool we give advisors is we help them figure out who their top 2 or 3 personas are. And we give them some tools so they can quickly figure out who they're dealing with so that they never waste time with somebody that's just not a good fit. Doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means, they just, you and them aren't going to make magic together.
Wow.
And so that's a tool that we give. We don't charge for that. We want to see more people swinging in their strike zones. So that's an assessment we have on the website, and it's available to anybody that wants to take it free of charge.
Fantastic. And so if you're going through any of those challenges, organic growth is a problem, you're reaching limits yourself, or you have a team of advisors that are reaching limits, sounds like you got to go to fiduciaryalchemy.com, grab a hold of that tool as a starting point just to help you grow, and then listen to all the episodes of the Fiduciary Alchemy podcast, and you will be in fantastic shape to help you grow your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Craig, that's fantastic. It's been awesome. Episode number 1. Glad we covered a lot of bases, got the audience fired up for what's coming next. I'm excited to listen to these episodes, and I don't really have much to do with the financial world, which is what I'm excited about because I get to learn. Just like you were saying, when I hear something like that, it 100% will apply to me in a different way that it applies to somebody else, but that's the beauty of it. So thank you for allowing me to interview you for this first episode. I appreciate it. And I look forward to all the episodes. Find them on fiduciaryalchemy.com.
And Nils, thank you for doing this. I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. And just really have enjoyed you being a part of my life. So thanks for hosting this episode.
My pleasure. Same feeling as mutual. Thanks, man.
Thank you for tuning in to Fiduciary Alchemy, the coolest financial podcast you're likely to find. We go looking for voices like the one you just heard because I want you to dodge the mistakes that I made and learn it without the coma, without the drama, without nearly paying the man. I don't know why I lived when so many others died. That part's still a mystery. Now, some folks ask, Craig, what is it you do? Well, I'm telling you now, that's no mystery at all. We solve hard marketing problems in crowded markets so good folks like our guests can rise above the noise, become visible, memorable, irresistible, and grow like never before. If organic growth is your problem, reach out, call me. Let's make a plan and bring your next steps into the light. But don't leave yet. Stick around a minute more and listen to Bluesman Grendel and the Compliance Choir deliver a word of caution. Just for you.
This podcast is for information, education, that is all. It is not financial, tax, or legal advice to guide your call. Nothing here's an offer, nothing here's a buy or sell. No recommendation, no solicitation. I'm saying it plain and well.
Plain and well. Plain and well.
Past performance ain't no promise of what tomorrow brings. Markets turning, people lose on all kinds of hopeful things. Every investment carries risk. Principle can fade away. What works for one won't fit us all. That truth is here to stay.
Fade away.
Fade away.
Here to stay.
Yeah, that's the compliance blues. Lord, the compliance blues. Get your own financial, tax, and legal help before you make your move. That's the compliance blues. Your situation's yours alone. Your needs are not the same. Different facts and different goals can change the whole damn game. So talk to somebody qualified before you choose your road. Because the weight of every money move is your own load to hold. Your own road. Your own load. Your own load. that is right for you.